A few days before tragic death comes to President John F. Kennedy, he and the First Lady are the picture of happiness. Their children, John Jr. and Caroline, are to mark their birthdays after the President returns from a trip to Texas. Arriving in Dallas on the morning of the fatal day, he and Mrs. Kennedy are greeted by Vice President Johnson and the Mayor of Dallas. John F. Kennedy has been President 2 years, 10 months, 2 days. They ride in the familiar presidential limousine. Because the weather has turned fair, the transparent bubble top has been removed. From a fifth-floor window at 12:30 p.m. come the rifle shots that bring death to President Kennedy and seriously wound Governor Connally of Texas. 29 minutes later, the 35th President of the United States lies dead in a nearby hospital. The presidential limousine bears the marks of violent death. The flowers Mrs. Kennedy carried from the airport are twisted and torn. Shock and disbelief give way to tears. The nation and the world's reaction is one of bewilderment and grief. At the Dallas airport, 99 minutes after Mr. Kennedy's death, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, his wife at his side, and the grief-stricken widow with them, takes the presidential oath aboard the jet, which brings him, together with the body of the late president, back to Washington. Lyndon B. Johnson becomes America's 36th president. John F. Kennedy chose him as his deputy. Together, they were elected by the American people, who now look to Lyndon Johnson to assure continuity of government. Upon him now falls all the weight of leadership.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear. I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God's.
The nation, the world, mourns John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The funeral cortege moves from the White House to the Capitol, seat of the Congress of the United States. The caisson pauses at the Capitol steps, and from a limousine come the principal mourners, Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy and her children, and with them President Johnson and his wife and Attorney General Robert Kennedy, the late president's brother. Beneath the dome of the Capitol, the casket rests on a catafalque. President Johnson places a wreath of red and white roses at the foot of the casket. Then Mrs. Kennedy, holding Caroline by the hand, goes up to the casket. The widow lifts the flag and touches her lips to the bronze casket. Then it is the people of America who come to pay last respects to President Kennedy. Over 250,000 stream through the rotunda. Many wait as long as 10 hours. They wait through the chilly night. Not since the death of Franklin D. Roosevelt have the American people known such deep sorrow. Next day, Mrs. Kennedy and her brothers-in-law head the procession of walking mourners, including heads of state who have come from far away for this final homage. All follow the late president's casket, walking from the White House to St. Matthew's Cathedral. At the cathedral, Richard Cardinal Cushing of Boston will celebrate for Mr. Kennedy the Requiem Mass of the Catholic faith. The notable figures here include the Queen of Greece, the Emperor of Ethiopia, the President of France, Britain's Prince Philip and Prime Minister Hume, the President of the Philippines, the President and the Chancellor of West Germany, and many others. Among them is Anastas Mikoyan, a first Deputy Premier of the Soviet Union. Then the departure for the journey to Arlington National Cemetery. Little John Jr., who is 3 years old this day, responds to a whispered request from his mother. As the cortege crosses the bridge over the Potomac River, there is a distant view of the memorial building dedicated to another martyr president, Abraham Lincoln. Now, the last goodbye to John F. Kennedy. The flag that has covered the casket is folded. It is passed from hand to hand by the honor guard. It is received by the widow. Mrs. Kennedy ignites an eternal flame at the head of her husband's grave. John Fitzgerald Kennedy reaches the end of his earthly journey. Those he loved leave him to the green hills of Arlington Cemetery. The new president takes over his duties at once, for the presidency is a continuing institution. With Secretary of State Dean Rusk at his side, he receives the distinguished leaders who have attended the funeral. He expresses to them America's gratitude for the sympathy that has come from all over the world. President Johnson has all along been a strong supporter of John F. Kennedy's policies. Already he has made known that he intends to press for early enactment of the late president's Civil Rights Bill. President Johnson has traveled widely in Asia, Europe, Africa, the Americas, and knows the aspirations of their peoples. he has assured the world that while defending the interests of free nations, he will continue the quest for peace.